constitute about 25 questions out of 200 for the MRCP Part 1 exam. And among the clinical sciences, we have seven subheadings. So we have already covered cell, molecular membrane biology, clinical biochemistry, clinical physiology, genetics, and immunology in our previous lectures. So today we'll be covering the clinical anatomy and the statistics. So let us begin the class with the introduction of clinical anatomy and what are the important areas in the clinical anatomy you should know about for your MRCP Part 1 exam. So to begin, we'll start with skin. Skin is the largest organ in the body. So histologically, skin can be divided into following parts. One is the epidermis, which is the superficial layer. Then we have dermis, which is the just below the epidermis, which is has got hair follicles, vessels, and nerves. Then we have hypodermis, also called subcutaneous tissue, which is rich in fat. Then we have muscle, underlying muscle. So if you look at the structure here, we have the hair follicle. Hair follicle arises in epidermis, and generally it has got an attachment with the sebaceous gland, which secretes sebum. Then it also has got attachment to erector pili muscle, so which is required for piloerection. Then we have some sweat pores in the skin, which is required for sweating. Also, if you observe carefully, at the hypodermis level, we have the artery and the veins, which carry the blood supply to the dermis. Now, epidermis is usually avascular structure. Histologically, the epidermis can be divided into following five sublayers. One is the stratum corneum. This stratum corneum is composed of flat, dead, scale-like cells called keratin. Then we have stratum lucidum. Stratum lucidum consisting of clear layer, which is generally present in the thick skin area. It may be absent in the thin skin area. Then you have stratum granulosum. So granulosum acts an adhesion layer between the corneum and the spinous layer. This is the stratum spinosum. So it is the thickest layer among the epidermis. It consists of squamous cell which synthesize keratin, and they are inherently attached to each other because of the desmosomes. Then we have stratum basale, which forms the basement membrane. It is a single layer of columnar epithelium which produces keratinocyte and contains the melanocyte. Remember, among the epidermis, it's the stratum basale, which contains the melanocyte. This is also called as stratum germinatum. Next, we are going to start with the anatomy starting from head and neck. Then we're going to move into the chest, abdomen, and the limbs. So we'll start with the head. So this is the skull, which is, we can see the cranial fossa here. So this is the anterior cranial fossa, this is the middle cranial fossa, and this is the posterior cranial fossa. Now, anterior cranial fossa is predominantly made up of frontal bone. This is the frontal bone, and this is the ethmoid bone. So this is the ethmoid bone. The middle cranial fossa is made up of sphenoid bone. You can see the sphenoid bone here, and the temporal bone. So this is the temporal bones, which should be red in color. Then we have parietal bone, which you can see partly here in the posterior cranial fossa, and the occipital bone. This is the occipital bone. Now, why this is important? Because there are certain structures they exist the different foramina in the skull. So there are various foramina in the skull. One of them is the first, the cribriform plate, where the first cranial nerve, which is the olfactory nerve, which traverses through the cribriform plate. Then we have optic canal. So optic canal is present in the sphenoid bone, where the optic nerve will pass through this canal. Then we have something called superior orbital fissure. So superior orbital fissure is present in the sphenoid bone. So here there are the four important structures which passes through the superior orbital fissure. They are oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, ophthalmic nerve, and abducens nerve. So ophthalmic nerve is a branch of the trigeminal nerve. So we have here four important cranial nerves which pass through this superior orbital fissure. Then we have foramen rotundum. Foramen rotundum is the one where the maxillary nerve will pass. Then we have foramen ovale. Foramen ovale is the one where there is mandibular nerve. So we are going to discuss about mandibular nerve in our future slides. Then we have internal acoustic meatus. So this is the internal acoustic meatus, which is very important for the facial nerve and the vestibular cochlear nerve, which is the eighth cranial nerve. Then we have what is called as the jugular foramen. So jugular foramen is here. So jugular foramen is important for glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, and accessory nerve. So they are cranial nerve 9, 10, and 11. Then we have what's called a hypoglossal canal. Hypoglossal canal is important for hypoglossal nerve. So these are the various structure present in the or which passing through the canals which are in the fossa, which is in different fossa, anterior, mid, and posterior cranial fossa. Next, we will supply the blood supply to the head and neck. So blood supply to the head and neck predominantly by two arteries. One is the common carotid artery, which arises from the artery of the aorta. Then we have the vertebral artery. Vertebral artery arises from the subclavian artery. So the common carotid artery divides into external carotid, which supplies the face, and internal carotid. Internal carotid artery subsequently continues the middle cerebral artery, and it forms an anastomosis with the vertebral artery. So what is called as with the posterior communicating artery. So this is the circle of Willis, so which I'll be discussing in subsequent slide. So look at the external carotid artery. External carotid artery has got many branches, so which is predominant blood supply to the face. The internal carotid artery. The internal carotid artery is the one which does not have any branches in the neck. It directly continues as middle cerebral artery. So internal carotid artery has got four parts. One is the cervical part. Cervical part is the one which traverses through the neck, where it is the lateral to the vein, the internal jugular vein. Then we have this called as petrous part. Petrous part is the one where which enters the petrous bone. Then there's cavernous part where it enters the cavernous sinus. So here the cavernous sinus, which is a venous blood, is in direct contact with the internal carotid artery. Subsequently, it enters the brain, what is called a continuous middle cerebral artery, what is called a cerebral part. So these are the four parts of internal carotid artery. Remember, there is no branches of internal carotid artery in the neck. What are the branches of external carotids? The external carotid artery divides into following branches. One is the superior thyroid artery, which supplies the thyroid. One is the lingual artery, which supplies the tongue. Then facial artery, which supplies predominant part of the face. Then there is maxillary artery. Then we have superficial temporal artery. Then we have posterior auricular branch. Then we have occipital artery and ascending pharyngeal artery. So these are the branches of the external carotid artery. Let us discuss about the posterior circulation. Posterior circulation is predominantly formed by vertebral artery. So here you can see this is the carotid artery, which is here is the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery gives to vertebral artery. So vertebral artery passes through the preforaminal area, what is called as V1 area. Subsequently points to foramina. So it traverses through the foramina up to V3, up to the C2. Then subsequently it traverses the dura mater. So it has got a intradural course and enters the inside the skull. So two vertebral arteries join to form basilar artery. So this is how the posterior circulation is formed, and it continues as circle of Willis. So this is the circle of Willis. So this is the structure where you can see here you have two vertebral arteries. So these are the two vertebral arteries will join to form the basilar artery. So basilar artery ultimately divides into posterior cerebral artery. So this is the division of the basilar artery. Posterior cerebral artery, this is the basilar artery which I'm talking here, which gives rise to posterior cerebral artery on either side. Now, posterior cerebral artery is connected to the middle cerebral artery by what is called as posterior communicating artery. So this is a branch of the middle cerebral artery which joins the posterior cerebral artery, what is called as posterior communicating artery. Anteriorly, it forms anterior cerebral artery is there. So which is joined by what is called as the anterior communicating artery. So these together, this entire junction where the posterior circulation, which is the vertebral system, and the anterior circulation, which is the the carotid system, will form a circle. So this is called a circle of Willis. So middle cerebral artery is the largest artery. It transverses to the temporal and the frontal lobe. So here you can see this is the middle cerebral artery. It traverses to the temporal and the frontal lobe. External carotid artery gives to maxillary artery, which gives middle meningeal artery inside the dura mater.